Very cool. All right. I'll just give folks a few more minutes to come in. All right. Welcome, everyone. Hi from Cinereach. Thank you so much for being here. We're thrilled that you're interested in participating in this game jam to explore climate futures. For those who are not familiar with us as a team, Cinereach is a nonprofit media incubator with a goal of supporting narrative change through various forms of content. For those of you who are indie movie fans, you may know us as a film producer. Over the last few years, we've expanded our work into other forms of media to reach a broader swath of communities, and that's what brings us to you. So we represent the community learning and design team, which creates qualitative research processes to understand what people need from their content across mediums to feel better reflected in the work that we do. In this context, we're bringing the question of what a climate future looks like, sounds like, feels like to game developers to get a sense of how we can collectively imagine a world beyond the one that we're currently existing in. As we all know, climate change matters because we all inhabit the same spaces. And also different spaces, and that brings its own complexity. And it not only impacts our environment, but also our health, safety, well-being writ large. This game jam is an opportunity to reach people and create agency through the power of games, which you know better than we do. And from our perspective, games allow people to build worlds that allow them to imagine beyond where we currently are, and encourage people who identify across all lines of difference to take on varied roles and levels of decision-making power.
And hi, everyone. My name is Brooke Moreland. I'm the Director of Learning and Design. Our team created this toolkit as a collection of narrative research findings and considerations that we explored in partnership with our phenomenal partner, Good Energy, on climate change.
And hi, everyone. My name is Elisa Petrosova. I direct the consulting program at Good Energy, which is a nonprofit story consultancy for the age of climate change. We support media creators in telling wildly entertaining stories that honestly reflect the world we live in now, a world that's in a climate crisis. We just, as Brooke mentioned, partnered with Cinereach, and our main three objectives for that project were: one, to understand how climate change is being portrayed by existing narratives and the impact that those narratives are having on the climate movement. Two, to identify the types of climate change narratives that are not being told, but that have huge potentials to effectively inspire action, and understand why these stories are not yet being told. And three, to unearth the compelling ways in which climate narratives are reaching and mobilizing audiences. Back to you, Aya.
Thank you so much, Elisa. And I did not mention my name. My name is Aya Taveras. I'm the Director of Community on the Cinereach team. Our hope is that you'll find your own unique, fun, unexpected, original ways to see these narrative themes to inform your game design mechanics, world building, and narrative. And we hope that we know that your design process is likely well underway, given that we've already given you such a short span of time for this game jam. But we're hoping that this live Q&A can inform your next steps as you continue to build out these worlds.
Thank you so much. I can just chime in with a brief introduction to Anima. So, well, firstly, my name is Carla Reyes. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the founder and studio director of Anima Interactive, who are co-hosting the game jam with Cinereach and kind partnership with Good Energy as well, and our other supporters. Anima Interactive is a socially conscious video games and immersive media studio, which means that we're thinking very critically about a lot of social justice issues in the world and exploring how we can harness the very immense untapped potential of video games and interactive media to share stories about these social justice issues and shift hearts and minds and hopefully inspire real world change. And with that, I'll pass it over to my Leah.
Hi, everyone. You may have seen me in the Discord server, but my name is Mylea Laughlin, and I am the social media and community manager at Anima, as well as JustPlay Jam. We're so excited to have all of you working on your jam projects. And yeah, we're just really excited to be engaging with all of you in this way, and we're really looking forward to the game projects that you're working on. And yeah, just thank you so much for being here.
Awesome. So I don't know, Brooke and Aya, if you wanted to just run through the toolkit at a high level first for the audience. I know that most folks might have already had a chance to review it, but it would be great to hear a little bit from your side, just on what are the key takeaways or highlights from this great research that you've conducted that are worth sharing with folks while we have them here.
Sure. Should we jump into the most salient themes, Brooke?
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yep. As you can see, the toolkit, this is available on the Game Jam site. And so why does it matter? These are really important elements to really take with you as you are developing your game and getting to the most salient themes. We wanted to really make this as interactive as possible. So we have some really fun true and false, just to gauge your mind as you're thinking about the importance on the topic, what type of characters are being included and who are missing. As you can see that we really wanted to ensure that as you were thinking along about your worlds and your characters and your storylines, that we're making this research as digestible as possible. So we're going to go past these true and false and just key takeaways. One included potential futures. So for this is really, I think, a really cool one where gaming really has the opportunity to widen the possibilities of what we already know about climate change, flying in the face of any potential stereotypes that we're used to consuming as we are, whether it is watching movies or playing games or reading books. What are really new ways that you can think about this area to really, one, either educate, inform, empower? There's so many action words that are connected to really exploring potential futures. And that was one of the main topics that emerged when we met with over 30 people across the country about how they saw climate change and how it really resonated in their lives. Another one was consequences of climate change. That came up a lot. Just the posed significant and immediate threats to our societies, our ecosystems, and just our planet as a whole. Even acknowledging that this is a shared place where we all lived, as you're making your game and you're really thinking about the development, what are creative ways? What are different ways that we've never seen before that will help people grapple and understand these consequences that could be related to climate change? Aya, did you want to? I definitely want to share the floor.
Sure thing. Yeah. So as Brooke mentioned, she very thoughtfully designed this research methodology alongside a team of analysts to talk to people and get a sense qualitatively of what their primary concerns are as it relates to climate change, to get a sense of what people's varied experiences are across all lines of difference. And so what you see in the toolkit is a really thoughtful analysis. Thank you so much for sharing those resources in the chat. But what you see in the toolkit is essentially a translated version of the analysis across those 30 different workshop spaces that we've been a part of. And so if we can call your attention to the questions to ask yourself, we definitely encourage you. My assumption is that folks have already had some familiarity with the toolkit, and so I don't want to be didactic and run us through every single thing in here. But if we can go up to the questions to ask yourself, I think that's further up at the top. We wanted to convey what Cinereach does best, which is essentially taking a research methodology, applying it qualitatively, getting a sense of what folks need to see, feel, hear, experience reflected in the various types of media that they consume in order to accomplish our goals of, to borrow a phrase from Carla, shifting hearts and minds as it relates to various issues. Climate change, as we understand, touches people across all lines of difference. It's a global issue. It is everybody's issue. And so what we wanted to do is convey that both and translate that to you using your creative skill set as game developers, asking you to think first and foremost, what does this touch on for you? What is the sensory and emotional experience of climate change? This is one of the questions that that workshop participants got to answer themselves as part of their experience. How does it look, feel, sound, taste, and smell? That's going to be unique for all of us on this call. And getting a sense of what you might do with that as game developers is really interesting to us. Asking you to kind of interrogate what your experiences are and what brings you to this assignment, what called to you in responding to the call to be a part of this game jam. And then more technically, obviously our technical experts are represented here on the Anima team. But from our side, we're really curious about how your game imagines beyond that dichotomy of either dystopian future, which we've seen a ton, or an unrealistically stable one where nothing has really changed in terms of people's decision making other than a few more electric cars out on the roads. And so we'd love to get a sense of what comes up for you as you explore creatively what's in between that. Does your game allow players to consider the impacts of climate change on various communities, right? Are we seeing communities that we don't often see represented with dignity in media? I know that from some of the questions that you all shared in the Discord community, this was one that you wanted us to expound on a little bit. So once we get into our Q&A portion, I'll talk a little bit more about this. But how are you making decisions about the people in your world? Are there people in your world, right? How are you choosing to convey community and impact creatively without engaging really tired stereotypes, to Brooke's point? And then none of us on this call, I guess with the exception of Good Energy, have serious expertise in talking about climate change specifically. Elisa actually does. So I won't speak unanimously. But that's not our expectation of you, right? We wanted to really invite you through what we put in this toolkit to think about how players might experience climate change as a part of their world really organically, again, to borrow another word from Carla. And so that is sort of the both and of what this toolkit does, familiarizing you with the really thorough research that my colleague Brooke, genius of research, has designed, and how we are taking that into creative spaces and inviting creators like yourselves to play around, while also kind of retaining fidelity to the really important findings of that research. And so we're asking you to join us in this kind of experimental way of creating new forms of media. I'll pause there because I don't want to get super didactic about talking you through all of the pieces in what you likely have already read. And yeah, we'll get into
that was wonderful. I think that's wonderful. Do we want to start with the submitted questions and then open the floor? Good. Okay, great.
That's right.
All
All
right.
right, thank you both for, oh yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much for jumping into the toolkit. I think that was really informative. And yeah, we can go ahead and get started with the Q&A. If we want to start with our submitted questions first. Let's see. Yeah, from Cinereach's side, are there any questions that you'd like to tackle first?
Oh, just going through the submitted questions. So the one thing that would be great to hear about on Tuesday would be the assessment criteria. Is there a specific rubric? Do the judges care mostly about the story rather than polish, or whatever is relevant? That was one of the questions that were submitted. Do we want to address that?
Yeah, I can kind of jump in on this one. So just speaking broadly about how we're evaluating the projects, we are considering all of the aspects that we believe are, inherent and crucial to a game, which are primarily, the core gameplay, design, narrative, art, technical aspects, with the caveat that we understand fully that this is a very condensed time frame for, a game jam, and that we have our developer goggles on and know that, we're the outcomes of these projects are a result of approximately 3 weeks of work. So all of the jurors are bearing that in mind when evaluating the prototypes and projects of the jam. And then, of course, we are also considering the integration of the theme and the ways in which you have potentially, like, taken a lot of the insights that Aya and Brooke have just kindly shared with us, and really, like, have thought critically about how to weave in the theme to your projects. So hopefully that gives a sense of how we're looking at the games.
Thank you, Carla. And yeah, we'll jump into each question, and then we'll add each new question that's asked into the chat into the bottom of the queue, and we'll just kind of move through those questions as we go. So we have a question about expanding on avoiding stereotypes mentioned in the toolkit. Would you be able to provide a bit more context upon that?
Sure thing. Thank you so much, Mylia. So I would just add, in addition to what we asked in the About Your Game questions, right? When we're talking about circumstances in the world that impact communities disparately, our hope is that anyone who is creating in this kind of social justice space is thinking a lot about how communities across any lines of difference, considering all facets of social identity, right? Race, gender, identity, class, sexuality, all of the things that are a part of who we are and how we show up in the world, might inform how we experience, for instance, a natural disaster disparately. Our relationships to power inform how we experience those kinds of things, right? And so we're asking for you to convey some cognizance of that, some awareness of that, and also to think at the same time about how you do that without belaboring vulnerability, right? We don't want to only experience impacted communities in your games as just fragile, as just vulnerable, right? We are people. And so we want to see reflected, and this is to the extent that you are even including people in your game, right? You might imagine beyond a world with people at all. And so we certainly don't want to limit your creativity, and are really excited to see all of what you do with this invitation. But to the extent that you do portray real existing communities, we ask that you just consider dignity in how you do that. Be really mindful of stereotypes that exist about groups that have been societally disadvantaged and distanced from power, groups that have been historically excluded from broader representation, and that you not engage those same stereotypes over and over again, right? There's so many resources, especially in 2024, that can help you to think about how you do that in design, in scripting, and so we ask for some attention to that, right? If you need more information on that, happy to expand a little bit further, but that is our thinking there.
Perfect.
Thank you so much, Aya. Yeah, go ahead, Mylia.
Awesome. All right, our next question is, what would a successful integration of the theme look like? I know we touched upon that a bit in the toolkit, but I would love for you to expand upon that a bit for this question.
So here, and then I will tag in Elisa if you want to join me on this one, as I think it kind of dovetails into the next. But we're asking you to think about how climate change might show up organically. We don't necessarily want you to be limited to creating the climate game, right? It impacts us in ways that are very apparent and flagrant in the day-to-day, and it impacts us in more subtle ways. And so we're asking you to kind of mimic that organic experience in how you think about your worlds. Again, don't want to be at all prescriptive, because we are not you, right? We're not in the role of developer, and especially for those of you who were a part of the last Game Jam experience, you all have the propensity to come up with such creative and imaginative worlds that we want to be really cautious about being prescriptive there. But that is what we want you to know at this point. Elisa, is there anything else or anyone else that you could add?
Yeah, so at Good Energy, we really think that there's no one right way to portray climate in your stories. Specific climate focused plots are awesome, but so are casual mentions. We talk about this through a term that we've coined called the climate lens. So the climate lens can be lifted to any aspect of a story that you're already working on. So it's character theme and story world can all be entry points to writing about the climate crisis. And the first doorway can be as simple and concrete as everyday behaviors in your characters or actions in your characters. And I'll just put two links in the chat to the Good Energy playbook. And this is just meant to be a menu of inspiration. And I'll leave it at that, but there's lots there to explore if you're feeling stuck.
Okay, great.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
All right. Next question is, what kinds of stories are sort of overdone and which ones should we lean into more?
I can take this one again. I think the three main themes that we see really as overdone is individual action stories. So while individual action, like biking, eating a plant-forward diet, installing solar panels can be empowering and effective, their impacts are limited by the fact that individuals themselves are not the main driver of the climate crisis. And so then basically from those individual actions, we usually see shame narratives come up. And shame narratives were actually popularized by oil companies with the idea of the carbon footprint to put people's attention back on their own individual choices rather than the big companies. But obviously shame narratives, when employed with nuance, can distract from the big players responsible for this crisis. Sorry, when not employed with nuance. And then the last one is mocking climate activists. So we see this a lot, and while humor is a great addition to any story or video game, having that humor come at the expense of the people working towards the solutions is a trope that's best avoided. Those are my three. I don't know if I or Brooke, you have any others.
All right, great, thank you. Our next question comes from the chat, which asked, who is the audience expected that you expect us to target with this game? How does this factor into the evaluation?
Yeah, I can chime in a little bit here and say that we are looking for something that is scalable and can reach a wide scale. That is a factor of consideration. So, you know, we want to be able to reach the widest possible audience with these stories. I think it's also worth noting that we don't simply want to preach to the converted here as well, and that we are looking to be able to echo what I've and reiterate what I've said before, right? Shift hearts and minds, which means that we want to be able to raise awareness about these themes and narratives to an audience that might not necessarily gravitate toward this already, right?
Yeah, and I would say that, you know, we do want to approach it in a very nuanced way, but also making the information very accessible to those who are reading and engaging with it. So yeah, just keeping that in mind, like language level and the use of jargon. You want to do your best to make it accessible for anyone who just likes playing games to also enjoy it. Okay. Do we have any additional questions from the chat that you'd like to answer? I know there's a lot of information, so it takes a little bit of time to like process and know exactly what you want to ask. So no rush if you don't have questions just yet. But we're opening the floor to any questions.
think one just popped up. Someone said, what's some good examples of shaming the big corporations and games?
Is this a question to ask about what not to do, since we just suggested that the shame narratives are approaches that we are not necessarily condoning? I guess that would be my question to the question to make sure that I understand it correctly. I actually don't have any specific example to call out from a game that shames like a large corporation within this specific context. I don't know, Mylea, if you have any thoughts as well.
I would ask for clarification exactly on the question there. One question from Maggie says, are there any games that the teams found that illustrate good practices for handling climate conscious stories?
Or sorry, just can we back up on the last question? I just want to clarify. I think that shame towards a corporation is not necessarily a bad thing. It's shaming individuals is more. So like I think that there's definitely room to point out the issues with our systems at B and the powers at B. And so I think if we flip that narrative back onto the fossil fuel industry or other large polluters, that's not necessarily a problematic narrative from a perspective. Just wanted to clarify, but I do not have a specific video game example, but I will look out for one.
Thank you, Elisa. I think that was a good insight into that. One answer I guess I would have for both of these would be Stardew Valley. I think that would be a good one that you could take a look at. Has a great climate narrative.
It looks like someone also dropped one into an example into the chat.
Oh yeah, Norco. I will collect all of the links that are shared in the chat and share them afterwards with everyone else in the Discord server as well. And Carla, did we have any other game examples that we wanted to mention as
I can point to some of the projects and features within projects that have been explored through the Playing for the Planet Alliance, which is run by the UN Environment Program. I'm just going to link that in the chat as well. So these are vetted by UN Environment Program and other organizations and consortium of video game studios, mostly larger ones that have already have access to larger audiences. So these are kind of tested and validated as proven examples of how to inspire real world change with with climate related themes and stories. Any other questions?
Another submitted question that we had through DM was, what types of climate narratives would stand out to our judging team?
Yeah, I think in response to this question, there's not really anything prescriptive that we, again, as Aya mentioned, we don't want to limit creativity here and specifically direct the participants in any specific way. So just bearing in mind, the objective data and insights that we've shared with the toolkit, I think those are the kind of prompts that you should consider. But there are no specific narratives, right? In the spirit of being, equitable and unbiased. And I think that it's good to kind of just see what we get right from the outcomes of your projects, and we want imagination to flow.
I'm a professor, and to my students, I always say that like your teacher never knows what they want when they give an assignment, and like we want what you want. Like if you are really interested and nerding out on something, then like that is what we want to see, because your passion is going to translate into like clearly something that other people are going to want to be engaged in. And so I wouldn't get too caught up into what do they want based on all these things that they've told me and all this information and research that they've presented, right? That's not going to be helpful. We want to know what you are interested in at this intersection, and there's a million ways to explore that. And we're looking to you to pick, one or two or four or five and go that way. And so something that I think translates here.
Yeah, totally agree. Those themes really inform whatever that creative process is for you. And so whatever that creative process is, definitely it's exciting to be able to see what really develops in the game that you make. So
Thank you. I think there was another question in the chat about whether we judge solo developer submissions and team submissions the same. It's a good question. So we bear in mind, of course, what the product is, and know that if there are more contributors, that it could reach, potentially a certain level of polish, and so it's weighted differently in our evaluations. We'll always call that out with the jurors.
Another question was, what level of polish is the team expecting from submissions, considering the jam is only 2.5 weeks long?
Yeah, so as I alluded to earlier, we have our developer goggles on, and are mindful that we're not expecting a fully polished product necessarily, given the time constraints of the jam. However, we do consider that as game developers, as game designers, you want to scope things appropriately. And so you want to consider, what can I actually feasibly achieve within a 3-week time frame, where I can convey the ideas and features and concepts that I would like to. Of course, and once that's executed, it's not always easy to reconcile from the original ideas, but if you can try to find some ways to scope things, and feel free to ask in the Discord server. There's a lot of support. Feel free to reach out to the organizers as well if you have any questions around that. But yes, I guess the TLDR is that we're not expecting a publishable product by the end of the game jam.
Any other questions?
And then I guess I do have a question. So if anyone has additional questions beyond this live Q&A, what can we share with people who are here today, what they can do? I guess what would be Anima's preference? Would they want to put questions in Discord, or would they email?
Yes,
What
yes,
would
you
that
can.
be?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can share any additional questions in the Ask the Organizers channel, which is in our Discord server.
I just threw in an article from Atmos, which is one of our partners, who has just a bunch of different video game examples for how to inspire a green new world. Take it with a grain of salt. I haven't played all these games, but just in case you're like, oh my God, what does this world even look like? Might be interesting there.
Yeah, I was just skimming the article, and Sam Barrett is mentioned, and he is one of the lead organizers of the Playing for the Planet Alliance that I linked to, so there might be some overlapping themes. So yeah, all good stuff. Thanks for sharing, Lisa.
And there's a systems perhaps shaming game called Oligarchy, so
I've never heard of that. Okay.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, I will be putting all of the links in the Discord server so everyone has access to all of them afterwards. Because I'm not sure if recordings always like include that. So yeah, I'll be sure to make a small little resource document for everyone to access.
That's great. Thank you so much, Mylia. I do see one more question about what happens with the games after the game jam. And so thank you so much for that. We are in, yeah, especially for those of you who know us as indie film producers, we are at an inflection point ourselves. And so, you know, a win is a win. And we are excited to receive what you all share. We will be in touch with folks as those decisions are made beyond June, if there is anything that we are able to do. But we will be sure to keep in touch with you. There are, for instance, from the last game jam that we hosted, so many people who brought such creative genius and such compelling stories to the worlds of their games. And so for me as director of community, I'm still thinking through how to kind of stay in conversation with those folks. But there isn't a real clear track. So we don't have a clear if then to offer you at this time, right? And so my advice would be to see how this goes, give it your all, and we're excited to receive. We'd love to just kind of get a sense of where you all are at. But there certainly is not there's not a desire to move anything forward without the folks who are creating.
Thanks, Aya. I see another question just popped into the chat. Can you explain the process for what happens with the games post-judging from a tech and game jam perspective? Okay, so I'll probably want to unpack that a little bit just to make sure I understand the question correctly, but I will.
This is Candace, Carla. I just meant that
Oh,
it's not like posted on a website. Some just literally this person may want to know where do they go?
Yes. So the submissions will be primarily hosted on Itch, right? And then select prototypes from the finalists will be invited to showcase at the Hollywood Climate Summit, as is suggested in the website and rules and terms, et cetera. And those for finalist prototypes and projects, we will be reaching out directly to the developers to elicit any specific technical requirements that we might need for that showcase specifically. But yeah, apart from that, everything should be centralized on the itch page, downloadable, right? Builds and or playable in browser. Hopefully that answers the question, Candace.
Yeah, and we will be creating a small collection on our itch.io page with all of the finalists. You can currently find the finalists from the last JustPlay Jam on our itch.io page, and you'll be able to play the games there as well. Thank you, Eric, for your kind words.
All right, folks, thank you so much again for joining us. We're super, super excited to see what you all send our way in a few weeks. And yeah, we encourage you to continue to stay in touch on the Discord community. Good luck, everyone.
Thank you.
Good luck,
Best of luck
everyone. Thank you so much.
there.